Some legends are told, some turn to dust or to gold, but you will remember me for centuries.
This is The Cameron Parker Show, brought to you by Spreaker, where we discuss everything from around the local professional sports scene in Colorado, such as the Denver Broncos.
Chris Harris comes out. I don't know if he was on the drive, but he said, I knew 15 seconds into that game that I should have been on T.Y. Hilton. If players are coming out and saying that, it falls again on the coaching staff.
Not to mention insiders from around your local sports scene. Ryan Spilborgs, former outfielder for your Colorado Rockies.
It's not going to be the 25 guys that leave spring training that are going to be the only guys the entire season. I mean, you need depth. You need guys that are going to be in your minor leagues that you may not expect.
Ryan Edwards.
You know, when you're talking about an offensive line, it's about the five best guys, right? And you're talking about the five best guys gelling. There hasn't been a lot of time for that.
It's showtime. Are you ready? Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. It is the Cameron Parker Show. The Cameron Parker Show, where we discuss everything in the local professional sports scene. And in this case, we have dedicated it to the Denver Broncos. And it is great to be back with you guys here at this Tuesday evening around 7 o'clock over in the Mile High City, Mile High at night. So thank you very much for the for making me a part of your guys' evening. And a little breaking news, by the way. I know we were going to be talking about the Denver Broncos, but Trevor Story just hit a 3-run bomb to give the Rockies a 4-run advantage for the Colorado Rockies in the first inning. This is the Cameron Parker Show. Please contribute to the show. We have a text line, and in order to contribute to the show, you have to create a Spreaker account, and therefore you can just contribute on the show, and I can see your guys' comments on for the show. And also, you guys can tweet the show and also tweet myself. My personal account is Cameron Parker PO, and also the show handle is CP_show. We've had the most activity last show. I believe we had about 15 to 20 comments, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. That's a lot, and so we want to keep those comments going. We want to keep the energy flowing, and we want to keep the Cameron Parker Show on the air. Thank you guys very much, again, for making the Cameron Parker Show part of your guys' day. Obviously, it's a little bit disappointing, to say the least, because we are talking about a Denver Broncos loss, and it was a loss to the hands of the Buffalo Bills. Certainly a disappointing loss. It's a disappointing loss that the Denver Broncos want to get better at. There were certainly many keys in the game that were devastating. And for the Broncos, they have to do a better job in some areas in order to make sure that they go on that winning track. But there are some positives for the fact that they did lose to the Buffalo Bills, and I'm going to at least outline a lot of that. To first start off, and we'll go to a quick break, but I think that obviously we want to talk about Trevor Siemian, and we will discuss Trevor Siemian at length, because there was a stupid, there was the stupid talk about him. Should they bench him after the worst, or his first worst game of 2017? So we'll be discussing about that at length. And obviously the defense. We'll be talking about the defense. The defense did not play up to snuff. They allowed big plays, or they allow a decent chunk of yardage against the Buffalo Bills. They didn't contain Tyrod Taylor. They didn't game plan in the second half for LaShawn McCoy. All of that contributes to a loss, and obviously we will be discussing the stupid penalty, which was the fake handshake to Von Miller. We'll be discussing that as well. So we have a loaded show and a jam-packed show for you here, talking about the Denver Broncos And we will probably sprinkle in some Colorado Rockies updates for you in this live broadcast. We'll be discussing, like I said, we'll be discussing the Denver Broncos, but we will be sprinkling in some Colorado Rockies baseball because it is postseason potential baseball for the Colorado Rockies, and they have the best fielding percentage in the National League, best runners in scoring position in the National League. So they are trying to push their good foot forward into the postseason. So when we come back, though, we will be discussing the Denver Broncos. So don't go anywhere because we have Sayer Bettinger on tap, the editor over at Predominantly Orange.
Ashes, I will rise. Your light is breaking through the night. I'm breathing in the air of life. Not giving in, this is my fight. Come break me down, every part of me. Nothing can stop me now. Awaken, holy fire, breathe life into my soul. 'Cause we're ready for revival. Come awaken, love. Come awaken, come awaken, love. Come awaken. Nothing can ever match your power. Shout out for victory. It's ours. Oh, break me down, every part of me. Nothing can stop me now. Awaken, holy fire, breathe life into my soul. 'Cause we're ready for revival. Come awaken, come awaken, love. Come awaken, come awaken, love. Come awaken, come awaken. Awaken, holy fire, breathe life into my soul. 'Cause we're ready for revival. Come awaken, come awaken. Awaken, holy fire, breathe life into my soul. 'Cause we're ready for revival. Come awaken, come awaken, love. Come awaken, come awaken, love. Come awaken, come awaken, love.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The Cameron Parker Show is back. Sorry for the absence. I certainly had to get better. I had to get better physically, mentally, ecumenically, grammatically, hypothetically. You know, as Jack Sparrow says, I had to get better, healthy, so I can be sure that I am at my best for you guys and for the listeners out there. So again, this is the Cameron Parker Show. Please contribute to the show. We have a text line. We have a chat line. Please feel free to chat in. We are discussing Trevor Siemian. We are going to be discussing the defense. We're going to be discussing Obviously, some of the offense to speak of. Certainly there was a topic and a point that wasn't brought up in the first 5 minutes, and that was the running game. The Denver Broncos had 17 carries, if I'm not mistaken. 17 carries. Now, we're not talking 17 carries for C.J. Anderson. We're not talking, 17 carries for Jamal Charles. We're talking 17 carries split between, we're talking split carries between Jamal Charles and C.J. Anderson. It really is it's an interesting perspective because, obviously I feel that Trevor Siemian can sling it with the best of them. He's clearly shown enough improvement from week 1 to week 2. So I believe that if you look at it, was it an absolutely disappointing performance? Absolutely. 120% it was a bad performance by Trevor Siemian. And I posed 2 questions, and I posed 2 poll questions on Twitter, on the Cameron Parker Show page. Should the Denver Broncos be worried about Trevor Siemian? Should they be worried about his performance? Because you look at it, he brought some of his old habits back of, not making all the proper reads, and really just really just throwing. He was to make the point. Really, he was making the right decision to throw the ball away, but he was very nonchalant about the throwaway, and he didn't show nearly enough arm strength on the throwaway. So, I think ideally, if you really want to pin, obviously, some blame on Trevor Siemian, he deserves it. He didn't play up to the standard that we saw in the first 2 weeks. And that interception was an absolutely horrible interception. The point of the game, the Denver Broncos, I believe, turned the Buffalo Bills over. So you look at the situation, it did not stack up in the favor of Trevor Siemian. However, that all said, you guys understand that he's a young quarterback, right? You guys understand that? And you guys understand the fact that Trevor Siemian has excelled from week 1 to week 2 at an alarming rate. So it should be at least a forgiving aspect to say, okay, he had a bad game. And the point really that I want to make to people, and I was making it to the people over Predominantly Orange, is that I get it. I want my quarterback to play at an alarming rate and play extremely well against any competition. That's just, obviously, that's how I feel. I'm sure that that's exactly how you feel. And good evening, Jeffrey. See you comment in. I think that the point that I really do think I need to make is that what I want Trevor Siemian to succeed against the Buffalo Bills, absolutely. But if you ask me, I would much rather him compete at the highest level against the Oakland Raiders, who obviously didn't play the best themselves. But I would much rather Trevor Siemian play the best against the Oakland Raiders, one of the toughest competition in the division, maybe the toughest competition next to the Kansas City Chiefs. I want Trevor Siemian to play the best against the top competition. And so I think that, did he not play well? Again, yes. But I want him to play the best in any sort of game. And that's why I think that this came at a right time for him to just bounce back, hit the film room, and get it to Oakland. Certainly he didn't use his legs as often. The third downs were okay, but there were times where he would throw short below the sticks. I think that really So I think that, yes, things happen. Really, things happen, and things will happen over a course of a season where are you going to expect a 16-game starter to play at his best all throughout the season? Probably not, I would say. So ideally, you want your quarterback to have 14 good games. I mean, this is what makes the best quarterbacks in the league the best quarterbacks in the league. And for Trevor Siemian, he has to show the ability to push off a bad game and play at a great level and show the ability to bounce back. Now, Michael Gallegos, who put forward a comment, he thought maybe he was hurt. That's possible. And now I think it's an interesting comment because we all saw what he played like and what he certainly was capable of when he was injured. He wasn't all that effective. However, that all said, I don't think he was hurt, which maybe is just another point as far as how bad he truly did play. Because if he was not hurt and he played like that, well, that's an issue. However, again, you absolutely want your player. You want your player to be effective in any point of the game. And Trevor Siemian was not effective. The turnovers killed him. And it was a situation for the Broncos that it started mounting and mounting and mounting to where they couldn't get anything done. And I think it's frustrating because obviously because the Broncos were all picked to win, but again, it literally had the makings of a trap game. I want to say that comment again. It was a trap game going into this game. Michael Gallegos himself, who put forward that comment, he said himself he thought it was a trap game. And I agreed with him because if you look at it, the Broncos were in an unfavorable record against Buffalo. They were 20-16 heading into that game. And not only that, they had not won in 10 years in Buffalo. Their last game, I believe, came when their last good game, I believe it was when Tebow was here. And as much as I love Tebow, his play was, very below average. So, but again, that's not to say that. See, here's the thing about a trap game, and I want people to understand this. A trap game is a mentality. A trap game is a mentality to where, look, the Broncos were clearly the better team, but when you hear people say that they had not won in the last 10 years, it will get into your psyche. It will get into your mentality to the point where it starts getting into your head, and you start thinking about it. You start kind of, maybe overcompensating on certain plays or overcompensating on a tackle or overcompensating on a potential catch. That's really the issue of what makes a trap game. It gets into your psyche. It gets into the ability to be effective on every single play and every single aspect of a game. It's the mental side of why it really is a trap game. It can fool you. It can make, and this is what makes the good teams from the bad teams and from the great teams from the good teams. It has to be effective. A good team has to be effective in all phases. In the running game, in the passing game, and in the mental side of things. Everything has to be right for a good team to be effective in the National Football League. And the Broncos did not have the mental capacity at all against the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills punched them in the mouth defensively and they didn't respond. And remember the last time that someone did that to to them? It was the Oakland Raiders, who they're going to end up playing this coming Sunday. The Broncos faced a good offensive line in the Oakland Raiders. Excuse me. And the Oakland Raiders punched them in the mouth, and they could not respond. The Oakland Raiders punched the Denver Broncos in the mouth with the offensive line play, strong, physical offensive line play, and the Broncos couldn't respond. Is there something to where the Broncos just don't seem to, once they get punched in the mouth and get a taste of their own medicine, do the Broncos just fold under pressure? I think it's a worthwhile debate. However, obviously, as far as going into the game, there were other players and other aspects that, well, as far as the game goes, was some of the keys as to why the Denver Broncos lost the game against the Buffalo Bills. Justin Simmons was one. He did not play the best as far as as far as his run stopping ability. However, that all said, Justin Simmons is a top 3 tackler on this team, in my opinion. He will be fine. Justin Simmons will be fine. He has the right makeup. Right mindset to be a terrific safety in the National Football League. And the one thing that you have to appreciate about Justin Simmons is, again, his length. He will be a better pass covering safety than T.J. Ward. Now, obviously, could the Denver Broncos have used a guy like a T.J. Ward against the Buffalo Bills? Absolutely, because of the bruising impact that T.J. Ward brought in the physical game, being able to play in the box. So, will they miss that? Absolutely. But when it's all said and done, Justin Simmons is a incredibly young safety. Okay, we're talking about a safety in T.J. Ward that was nearing 30, or a little bit past 30. But the fact is, the Denver Broncos will be just fine at safety. So I'm not worried about Justin Simmons over the long haul. Did he have a bad game? Absolutely. But he has the right makeup and the right mindset to make sure that when he does his homework, he hits the gaps. He hits everything. To ensure that he clogs everything as far as being a run stopper. I think he has all the makeups to be a really good safety, and I said before, I think he has the makings to be the best safety between he and T.J. Ward. Now, we move on to the defensive side of things again, and we talk about containing a quarterback. Historically, you look at the Broncos in the last 5-10 years, at least in the last, let's go 5 years. At least in the last 5 years, the Denver Broncos historically have been unable to stop mobile quarterbacks. When Andrew Luck was healthy, what was one of the key moments of a game that would keep a drive alive? It was the third down scramble. Or keeping your eyes locked on a wide receiver and not paying a lick of attention to a mobile quarterback and an athlete who can get a first down with his legs. The Broncos, historically, in the last 5 years, have not been able to stop a mobile quarterback. And Andrew Luck is a better quarterback than Tyrod Taylor, but Tyrod Taylor is a much better athlete. And there was a play where Tyrod Taylor absolutely made a play to extend the drive for the Buffalo Bills. And all props to Tyrod Taylor. All props to Tyrod Taylor for making a play there. And in fact, he outplayed Trevor Siemian. And yes, Rick Dennison, who was the Denver Broncos, OC and quarterback, guru at one time, wanted Tyrod Taylor, and a bunch of other coaches wanted Tyrod Taylor as a Denver Bronco quarterback. In fact, he was really close to being a Denver Bronco quarterback before he went on to Buffalo. But so I think that game kind of meant a lot to Tyrod Taylor. He was 20 of 26 for 220 some yards and 2 touchdowns. That will obviously be looked at as a game manager at some point in the level, because he was averaging 10 yards to throw. However, Tyrod Taylor, yeah, I realize that. But I'm just sorry, Jeffrey. I'm just saying, over time, historically, the Denver Broncos, historically, in the last year or two, especially going back to their Super Bowl years, the Denver Broncos defensively have done a good job as far as stopping mobile quarterbacks, as far as Cam Newton and Dak Prescott going back to 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago when they played the Dallas Cowboys. So, I mean, Aaron Rodgers himself is mobile enough, and they did that was probably one of the more complete games in 2015. But I was just saying more in the last 5 years. As far as the last 2 years, to when the Denver Broncos were in the Super Bowl, and to when they started building those great defensive teams, they were great at stopping a mobile quarterback because of everything was so sound and everything has been disciplined to the point where they pay attention to every single detail. So thank you for correcting me, Jeffrey. But I think that if you look at it, Tyrod Taylor, and maybe that's why it was so frustrating, because Tyrod Taylor was running wild at times. He was running wild at times on the Denver Broncos. And that's what made it so frustrating, because at this point in the last few years, the Denver Broncos have shown the capacity to stop a running quarterback. And Cody Roark, who was a fellow writer at Predominantly Orange, and now has his very own podcast at Locked On Broncos. Really good podcast. If you guys ever get a chance to listen to another Denver Broncos podcast, so please recommend Locked On Broncos. He mentioned the inability to respond. And there was a good amount of time in the games, or at least in the game against the Buffalo Bills, that the Denver Broncos would respond, usually, at least with a good drive, after the point where Buffalo would respond with a field goal. The Denver Broncos would respond with some points of their own. However, once the second half hit, and that's really the issue with the Denver Broncos in this game, is that in the second half, the Denver Broncos were a completely different team. It was a Jekyll and Hyde game. Now, that's not to say that the Denver Broncos should have played better defensively in the first half, because they should have. Because in all phases of the game, the Denver Broncos absolutely manhandled the Buffalo Bills. There was no reason why the Buffalo Bills should have put up 13 points, if I'm not mistaken. They should not have put up 13 points in the first half. And that goes into, maybe, if you were to ask me as far as what is the most disappointing aspect to that game, it really was it Trevor Siemian. Absolutely. I mean, he played horrible. He played good in the first half, but then played not so good in the second half. But if you ask me, ideally, who am I most disappointed in? It's the defense. Absolutely, without a doubt, it was the defense, because of how great they were, and in the situations that they were given, Okay, they could not get off the field. They were allowing big play after big play to Jordan Matthews. Okay? I mean, Chris Harris wasn't playing up to the standards as the shutdown corner that he needs to be. There were times where they were allowing the big play. And so, was it a mental lapse? Was it the heat? Because it was around 85, 90 degrees in Buffalo. Was it the heat? I don't know. I'm not trying to make excuses for the Broncos. But I think that ultimately you look at what the Broncos had. They had all the makings to beat the snot out of Buffalo. But on the flip side, the Denver Broncos weren't exactly the worst team in the AFC West that night. That was the Oakland Raiders. So I don't feel all that bad. I mean, and if you were to ask me, I would probably say Trevor Siemian was a better quarterback on Sunday than Derek Carr. And Derek Carr is legitimately a MVP candidate, or at least he was when Bill Musgrave was the coach, the offensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken, with the Oakland Raiders a year ago. So so I think that the Denver Broncos was Trevor Siemian a disappointment, absolutely. But the biggest disappointment came from a team or a unit that we are so used to seeing succeed, and they failed against a team and against a team that they should have easily manhandled. Now, on the flip side, when we come back, we're going to talk about the offensive side of the ball again. But we're going to talk about this inept ability in this game against the Buffalo Bills to find any identity in the running game, or lack thereof, I should say. So when we come back, we're going to discuss about Jamal Charles and C.J. Anderson only getting 17 carries between the two of them. And while Jamal Charles may not have had a lot of yards, there was a throwback run that made everybody in Broncos country happy as he was able to get his first touchdown in a Denver Broncos uniform. This is the Cameron Parker Show. When we come back, we will discuss that next.
We lift praise to you in heaven, and we raise our hands in adoration. For you are the God who saves, God who reigns, God forever, pouring grace, oh Lord. We need so much more of you. Your love is running through my veins, keeps my heart beating, keeps my heart beating. Jesus, you make me want to sing, joy is lifting me, grace has set me free. Your love is running through my veins, keeps my heart beating, keeps my heart beating. Jesus, you make me want to sing, joy is lifting me, grace has set me free. Chains have fallen off our feet, so we dance before our God and King. For you are the God who saves, God who reigns, God forever, pouring grace, oh Lord. We need so much more of you. 'Cause your love is running through my veins, keeps my heart beating, keeps my heart beating. Jesus, you make me wanna sing. Joy has lifted me, grace has set me free. Your love is running through my veins, keeps my heart beating, keeps my heart beating. Jesus, you make me wanna sing. Joy has lifted me, grace has set me free. Are shaking. Your love is unending. I'm on the rock, I will not be shaken. Jesus, your love unfailing. So giving praise till the walls are shaking. Your love is unending. I'm on the rock, I will not be shaken. Jesus, your love unfailing. Your love is running through my veins, keeps my heart beating, keeps my heart beating. Your love is running through my veins, keeps my heart beating, keeps my heart beating. Jesus, you make me wanna sing. Joy has lifted me, grace has set me free. Your love is running through my veins. Oh, Jesus, you make me wanna sing. Joy has lifted me, grace has set me free.
Welcome back. It is the Cameron Parker Show. Cameron Parker Show. Thank you, Sayer. It is Sayer Bettinger with the acoustic version of Veins. So, Jeffrey, if you really like this song, it is by Sayer Bettinger, and Sayer Bettinger is the editor over at Predominantly Orange. He's a song artist. He is part the album. He actually produced an album. The album was called Celebrate Worship. You guys can go find it on iTunes. So Jeffrey, if you really do like this tune, you can go and you can purchase it down over at iTunes. You can search it on Spotify. You can actually get the entire album, actually, if you wanted to. So it's called Celebrate Worship, and the album is called Awaken Love. And one of the songs, Awaken Love, was actually the first song, I believe, that we played in one of our breaks. So it's a great album. It really is a terrific album. He's obviously a great friend. I mean, he's the editor over at Predominantly Orange, so he's a multi-talented guy in all facets. So, speaking of multi-talented and multifaceted people, Jamal Charles in his career and C.J. Anderson, at least in the past few weeks, has shown the capability of being multifaceted, multi-talented. I think that's why it was just so frustrating for the Denver Broncos in this game against Buffalo. The Denver Broncos showed no identity when wanting to run the ball. When Jamal Charles is running with so much ferocity and quickness, and he's started to recapture his old self, I want to capitalize that. I absolutely want to capitalize that. And when C.J. Anderson is running and he's healthy, I want to make sure that everything is right, for this running game. And to abandon it or not show any sort of, I guess, fortitude to try and want to run the ball, it's incredibly disappointing to just see 17 carries between C.J. Anderson and Jamal Charles. And I think that was one of the keys as well. When you look at the Denver Broncos and you look at the Denver Broncos game against Buffalo, that was one of the keys that was so disappointing. C.J. Anderson is having, at least in the start, through 3 weeks, he's having a career start. Okay? He's looking healthy, and, one of the keys that he's been saying all along is that he's been wanting to be used in the passing game. And the Broncos, under Mike McCoy, are starting to try and find ways where they can use him in the passing game. So it is disappointing that the Broncos are not trying to, at least in the Buffalo game, not trying to find any sort of identity in that running game against Buffalo. And to a point, it goes to Trevor Siemian again for not wanting to use his legs on certain plays and trying to extend plays on a third down or try and shorten it a little bit. So I do think that it was disappointing. I really do think it ultimately was disappointing at the Broncos coaches, and I think that actually is another key. Excuse me, man, the coughing attack. I think that was also maybe one of the underlier keys in this game, and it was that the Broncos were out-coached. Yes, the Denver Broncos were out-coached. When you have a first-year head coach like Sean McDermott, and you have a first-year head coach like Vance Joseph, you want to be sure to make a good first impression for your football team, especially when you're facing each other, in a game. And Vance Joseph outthought himself on that fourth down conversion attempt. It was stupid, but at the same time, if he would have converted it, if Vance Joseph would have converted it, and D'Angelo Henderson would have been able to at least convert that first down, we're looking at the scenario where, hey, that was a great call, So the roles would have been very much reversed. If D'Angelo Henderson would have gotten the first down there. So I think really, though, Vance Joseph was outcoached. He was outcoached by Sean McDermott, who, and oh, by the way, all credit to Sean McDermott. So there were a lot of underlying stories in this Denver Broncos-Buffalo Bills game that really I never discussed at length, or really never touched on at all. Do you guys remember Sean McDermott at all? Sean McDermott was the offensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers, the one that went to the Super Bowl, that's Sean McDermott. You don't think he wanted to show to the Denver Broncos that he still got it as an offensive mind and try and prove to the Denver Broncos that he can dice up a good enough game plan against the Broncos defense? So while Tyrod Taylor certainly deserves a lot of credit, Sean McDermott deserves a heck of a lot as far as developing a game plan and developing a second half game plan to get LaShawn McCoy involved in the second half in the passing game, because the running game wasn't happening. The defensive line for the Denver Broncos does appear to be improved. So I think ultimately there really was another story. Sean McDermott wanted to prove that he could beat the Denver Broncos defense for once. And he did. So I think that does deserve quite a bit of some credit. So here I am. I'm a Broncos fan, and I am commending Sean McDermott, for the job that he did. And I'm pretty sure you look at Carolina right now. They would love to have Sean McDermott back. I can't talk. Sean McDermott back to run their offense, because while Christian McCaffrey had a great receiving game, they're not doing a lick to help Christian McCaffrey on that team. And especially Cam Newton. Cam Newton Jeffrey was talking about it earlier. And again, Jeffrey, thank you very much for clarifying that. Thank you very much for catching that. Cam Newton's not himself. And that's because the Broncos broke him. But, so I think that's kind of an underlying story. Is that I do believe that Sean McDermott wanted to prove that he can beat the Denver Broncos in all phases. So I think that's kind of an underlying story. I really do. Now, kind of back to this Trevor Siemian thing. Trevor Siemian, am I worried? Am I ultimately worried about it? No. But I'm worried to the point because we've seen habits before. And these habits, and I'm not just talking about Trevor Siemian, okay, when I'm talking about habits. I'm talking about just strictly individuals in general. Habits have a tendency to come back. They're hard to break. And especially for a young quarterback in the National Football League, you can get comfortable at times. Or if you get pressured, you want to try and get back to a comfort level. That comfort level is start to become a habit. Case in point, Trevor Siemian is now playing, or was playing on Sunday, bringing up his old habits as far as being really quick and decisive with the football, forcing throws when he really shouldn't, or making an errant throw, a potential throwaway, and being 120% nonchalant about his throw. So, really, I'm not all that worried about Trevor Siemian, and thank you to Cody Latimer's aunt who commented and said that she wasn't worried, that she's not worried. And by the way, shout out to Cody Latimer. Cody Latimer made probably the momentum shift on special teams, on a great special teams run. It was his best special teams run as a Denver Bronco, and it was great to see. We'd like to see more of that. So congratulations, Cody, man. You did a great job on that special teams play. Now, I really do think that Trevor Siemian will be fine. Because, again, he is a young quarterback. He's going to be groomed. He's going to be groomed to the point where there will be those ups and downs. Okay? And it was going to come back eventually. At some point, his habits were going to catch up with him. Or maybe not catch up with him, but it was going to catch up to the point where we were going to see some of those habits creep in. And like I said earlier, I would much rather see Trevor Siemian have his habits come back against a bad team, so to speak, like the Buffalo Bills, than have his habits come back in a critical game against the Oakland Raiders. You guys feel me on that one? Now, I was asked about it, I believe it was on that Sunday during the game, or after the game, but I believe it was Tim Spurs, I believe. He asked me the question. He said, well, what would quantify potentially if I was to bench Siemian? Well, it's simple. If he's continuing to regress and he's continuing to regress mid-season, well, then you certainly are looking at this situation, if not earlier. I said mid-season. If he's starting to regress and he's starting to regress rapidly, well, then that's a problem. And it's a significant problem because you want your quarterback to be right and absolutely right in mid-season. You want him to reach mid-season form. And if Trevor Siemian can't reach mid-season form, then you got to make a change. So, but that is not to say that Trevor Siemian is not 100% capable of putting this Buffalo Bills game behind him and moving forward. He's more than capable. I mean, he's fought off a first-round label of Paxton Lynch twice. That in of itself shows you the mental toughness of the kid. Now, it's up to him, and especially in the times that he's been injured, and again, if there's one thing that you can't question about Trevor Siemian is his toughness. Now, toughness and equating it to being able to be effective in the pocket is a whole different story. And that in turn goes to him being injured. But Trevor Siemian does have to be healthy. To go to a few of the comments earlier, Trevor Siemian does have to be healthy for this Broncos passing offense to be effective. If Trevor Siemian is healthy and the offensive line holds their end of the bargain on the right tackle spot, Trevor Siemian will light you up like a firecracker. He is smart enough, I think, right now, when he has a lot of time, to dice you up and start to see the mismatches and really take advantage of it. And especially, and this is going to be a test for him, because you have the Oakland Raiders that are going to be coming on and probably playing with a lot of a chip on their shoulder, to use a Broncos terminology. They're going to be wanting to play with a chip on their shoulder. They want to prove that they can play well defensively, and if there's one real negative, aside from the bad offensive game that they had, if there is really one potential negative about the Oakland Raiders, it's that their defense is a sieve. So ideally, I think Trevor Siemian would like to bounce back against a horrible defense like the Oakland Raiders. And it's one of the reasons why I think that the Oakland Raiders could be a pretender playoff team, because they don't have a steady enough defense to put them over the hump. And these are the types of games that Oakland has to prove that they will be that team. So ultimately, I personally feel that the Trevor Siemian player that we saw against the Buffalo Bills is not the Trevor Siemian that we could potentially see in games to come. Trevor Siemian will be fine, and Trevor Siemian will be a good enough quarterback, I think, to respond well. So yeah. When we come back, I'm going to do a little bit of a quick Rockies update, and then we're going to wrap up the show. And so, Jeffrey, if you really liked this tune, this is also by Sayer Bettinger, and this is called Dance for You on that same album.
Let the heavens roar and all that's within me. Can't stop singing now. Revival is coming. There's no other name. To you be the glory. Every victory you have delivered me. Don't ever stop. Come on and sing it now. Lift up a shout of praise. With all my heart, I will bless your name.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We have breaking news. If you guys are tuning in, and Jeffrey's been commenting in, but we have some breaking news. And it's about the Cameron Parker Show, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't know, actually it's two breaking news because ever since the last show, a lot's happened as far as the broadcast of this Cameron Parker Show. And what am I talking about? Well, what I'm talking about is that the Cameron Parker Show has now been podcasted and approved for iTunes. The Cameron Parker Show has now been podcasted and now will be broadcasted on iTunes. But that's just the beginning. I have other news for you. I was searching my email and I opened up my email box. The Cameron Parker Show has also now been approved for iHeartRadio. iHeartRadio now is going to be broadcasting the Cameron Parker Show. And as you all know, the iHeartRadio community is a community that, like iTunes, will be broadcasted to millions of people. So this is just another step in the direction as far as the production and producing and sending it out of the Cameron Parker Show, and I am thrilled and honored to say that the Cameron Parker Show will now be on iTunes and iHeartRadio. So if you want to search the Cameron Parker Show, not just on Spreaker, you can search it on iTunes by typing in the Cameron Parker Show, and then within the next 72 hours, you can now search the Cameron Parker Show on iHeartRadio. And not only that, and I didn't even mention this, but I am also YouTube famous, sort of. But you can search the Cameron Parker Show on YouTube, and you will see my lone actual video broadcast, and Jeffrey knows what I'm talking about because I used to do a Periscope broadcast, and I recorded it. But yeah, so lots happening certainly with this Cameron Parker Show in just a span of 96 hours, or just really in the last 3, 4, 5 days. So definitely a lot happening. It is still 4-0. The Colorado Rockies are still up 4-0. However, my MVP, I've changed a lot of tunes, certainly, with the Colorado Rockies, but my MVP between Charlie Blackmon and Nolan Arenado, well, he's up to the plate. Charlie Blackmon is up to the plate, and he's my MVP right now. And runners are on second and third, and looking to extend the lead to 6-0, or 6-0, or 5-0 on something fluky of a hit. The Rockies, they kind of find themselves in a dogfight to the end of the season. However, for the Rockies' sake, they did catch a break. All 6 of their games are at home. And for the Brewers and Cardinals, they all face each other. And really, if you look at it, the Rockies, if they can take care of business these next few games against they actually intentionally walked Charlie Blackmon, by the way, to face DJ LeMahieu. Ideally, if you look at the situation for the Rockies, their best case scenario is to take care of business, and the last end of the schedule is certainly way more favorable for the Rockies than it is the Brewers and the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals play the Cubs, and the Brewers play the Pirates. No, the Brewers don't play the Pirates, but the Cardinals. So I think anything can happen. And talk about a little bit of a flashback if the Rockies play the Arizona Diamondbacks. It's not quite the San Diego Padres, but it's another NL West foe potentially in a playoff game, and we all know exactly what happened in that year of 2007. DJ LeMahieu grounds out, by the way, to end the inning. So runners are stranded, and the bases loaded and 2 outs. So darn, the Rockies couldn't take advantage of there. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to this edition of the Cameron Parker Show. And as I just threw out about a few minutes ago, we had breaking news that the Cameron Parker Show is now broadcasted on iTunes and now iHeartRadio. So feel free to search the Cameron Parker Show right now on iTunes by searching The Cameron Parker Show. And in the next 72 hours, search The Cameron Parker Show on iHeartRadio. And then soon, The Cameron Parker Show will be broadcasted to millions on iHeartRadio and as well as on Spreaker and YouTube. Thank you very much again for tuning in. And thank you to Jeffrey for commenting in on the show. I love the profile, love the Abby pick. It's very appropriate with it being Raider Week. This has been The Cameron Parker Show. Thank you very much for tuning in.